What is up, my cutout cardboard ninja here, coming at you with the first viewer requested video. Now, just so we're clear, viewers have made requests before, but I just didn't do them. However, because I do tier lists all the time, this one is an alright request. This one's for you, Rawling2. Rawling is requesting a factions tier list. He says he already made it on Tier Maker, and he did. There it is. Look at that. And he would like me to go through them, and this might be useful information for new players and middle players who are leveling up the factions in Crossout. So, without further ado, let's take a look at these factions. We're going to start off with the Engineer faction. That's this little icon here. For those of us unfamiliar, the Engineers are the default faction in Crossout. You're expecting me to put them in B tier, but that might not be the case, not after all these dangdable changes. So let's bang it out over here in ye old Crossy Outy, and as you can see in Crossout, you unlock a bunch of parts. This is not an easy view to see it, but it is the view that you get. This, because it's the default faction, no matter what, you cannot not level up the Engineers. Just by playing the game, your Engineer faction will simply level up, and they're going to give you things for your range, and they're going to give you a couple of guns to get you started with, and some parts that are integral. They're going to even give you little cosmetics to give you a little taste. Y'all know what I mean by a little taste. And all that good stuff like that. And at level 10, it unlocks the access to 3 of the factions, if I recall correctly, as well as a bunch of other random things. Those are the 3 factions that are unlocked, which is the Lunatics, the Nomads, and the Scavengers. Their parts are characterized by being bulky, ugly, and decent. That's the best way of putting it. So, what do I mean by that? So, if you go to the parts, and by the way, you can do this, you just search by Engineer parts. Every part here is from the Engineers. The Engineers have among the best bumpers in the entire game, and some of the best melee, if not the best melee. So let's start off with that. The King of Birds, what recently introduced into Crossout, has an incredible 209 durability and maintains that 90% damage resistance, unlike bumpers, which recently got dropped down to 80%. An extraordinary value for from durability to mass, and it's actually not a bad part to build with. It's actually pretty good, really good. Strong melee is actually probably one of the best compliments I can give the Engineers. Followed by the Hatchet, which is the premier melee part. You see them on every build basically because of the fact that they're shaped right, they reach far, they're good at what they do, they increase the damage by a lot. Pioneer's Bumper is a more recent addition to Crossout. You only get 1. I desperately think that you should get 2. This is one of my personal favorite bumpers simply because of the shape and the size. It is a 2x4x1. The Off-Road Bumper is legendary. This thing used to be trash, honestly. But then for whatever reason they made the durability 139, and now it is one of the best bumpers in the game, probably bumper number 3. And that's all available from the Engineer faction. Some of the parts aren't very good. Your struts, even though they look cool, they aren't very good. One of the things of note for the Engineers is, in the recent update, they gave the Engineers 20% damage resistance split amongst different resistances, because they are a basic faction. They only get 20. Advanced factions, I believe, get 25. But the 20% they get is in bullet and blast, 10% each. So that means that each of these parts takes 10% less damage from bullets, which is the overwhelming vast majority of attacks in Crossout, and blast, which is the overwhelming vast secondary majority of weapons in Crossout. So their parts are actually very durable. Even though this has 32 hit points, it basically has, you'd think 33 hit points, right? Actually, no. I need to make a damage reduction video so you guys can understand how this works, but interspersing Engineer parts in your build will actually go a very long way due to modern penetration mechanics. So, where do they go on the tier list? We've got bunch of good parts, we've got a bunch of decent parts, we've got some bad parts, but all in all, the Engineers faction is actually surprisingly A tier. It's not average, it's great. The Engineer faction is also the faction that unlocks your frame. As you level up Engineers, you get more basic frames. So in order to have basic builds, you kind of need to level them up. So they actually end up giving you a lot in this game. They give you decent parts with decent resistances. They give you some of the best bumpers in the entire game. They give you the best melee in the game. And as I said earlier, they give you frame parts. So they actually end up in A tier. Next up, we're going to cover the basic factions. We're going to go to, I believe this is Scavenger. So the Scavengers Take a look at ye old Scavengers. Scavengers faction. These guys are your premier, almost heavy parts. They are characterized, parts with from the Scavengers are characterized as having the second highest durability, but worst to durability to mass ratio in the game. The worst is coming up on the list, but the idea is that if you need parts that have a lot of durability, typically you go towards the Scavenger. If you're brand new to the game and you haven't unlocked the Steppenwolves yet, then these are the parts that you're going to want to shove on your build to increase your durability. They have access to one of the most iconic bumpers in all of Crossout, the Train Plow, which is one of the reasons why you definitely want to unlock their faction. But they also have access, if I could, no, they don't, my bad. Yeah, the Train Plow. Also, when you prestige them, you get these sweet, sweet Phantom Fenders, you get these sweet, sweet Bartisans, and you get these sweet, sweet recovers. So they're pretty good, but one of the things that you may notice is that they lack frame, because only 2 factions in the game get frame. So go to storage, let's go to Scavengers. Ultimately, the idea is this. There are a lot of 2x1x4 parts in the game. The pipe shield is not that good, actually, believe it or not. It's never my go-to. The only reason why I would ever build with the long pipe shield is because if you need a 2x6, and you just happen to have that gap, the long pipe shield is one of only 2 parts in the entire game that covers that 2x6 gap. So, and I believe it falls short to the other one. The only reason why you would use long pipe shields is that you have more of them. Large fenders are phenomenal. There are multiple weapons in the game that can only be protected by large fenders, and they're protected by it perfectly. If you are a Caucus player, you know that large fender fits right in there, as does the Caucus fit into the Bartisan, and both of them come from the Scavenger faction. They don't get melee. They don't provide a melee, but they do provide a couple of bumpers. The Veil Bumper, if I recall correctly, is something that you unlock with Prestige. You don't really use it that often. It does look cool. The Terry Bull bar used to be very, very, very good, but now it is very, very, very Terry Bull. It's got the right shape, but for 324 kilograms, you're looking at such an insane durability to mass imbalance. Just to give you an idea, and I use the off-road bumper as a bar. And that bar is it good or not? It has to be that kind of good, right? For 139 durability, it costs 192 mass. So you're missing about 60 mass to durability on that. For 161 durability, remember, this is only 30 or something more durability, you're paying 324 mass. That is a lot of mass difference. So the Terrible Bar isn't exactly that good, though there are reasons to use it. The Terrible Bar is properly shaped so that if you're attempting to protect your guns in certain ways that are damn near broken, only the Terry Bull Bar can pull it off. For example, if you're using ruptures or things like that. So it's got its niches. The Freight Train Plow, which is the bumper with the highest durability in the entire game, also comes from the Scavenger faction. Though I don't know if, we're going to find out today, if you get it via leveling up. Yep, you don't. It belongs to the Scavenger faction, but I believe it was unlocked during an event. So that means that even though it is a factional part, you have to go to, I think it's Ivy, with engineer badges, to redeem. So you go over here to the engineer badges, you go to Ivy, and then for me, because I have every blueprint, I have every part in the game, it's not listed here. But if you don't own the part, it'll be down here for you to spend points on. And the factions don't really matter on that, but just letting you know. More on that super heavy part. I don't really use it, but there are plenty of builds that do. The plenty of builds that do are usually, believe it or not heavy builds. They're just they're like dog builds. They're just trying to use it to protect their guns, as almost everything in Crossout is protecting your guns, and it actually does a decent job at that. So, where do Scavengers land? They land right around B tier. There's a solid couple bumpers in there that you want to unlock. You definitely want to. You want to get to at least the first Train Plow, because that's just a phenomenal thing to get. But ultimately, you can put off leveling Scavengers unless you're trying to get to the Steppenwolves in a rapid fashion. The next up, I believe, is the Lunatic faction. So, I think this is obvious, because on other guides that I've already made, I've already said that you should level up Lunatics first, so I'm not gonna, like, you know, beat around the bush too much. Lunatics, bang, are pretty dang good. Not gonna lie to you. Other than the Engineers, the Lunatics are the only other faction that give away something called frame. And they don't give regular frame, they give lightweight frame. Lightweight frame is the default of crossout. If you go on to any exhibition, you know what, why not? Let's go to any exhibition. I guarantee you this thing is using lightweight frame. If it even has it listed over here. For some reason it doesn't. Should have it listed. Oh no, this guy's using heavy frame. Wow, well done me. The very first car I click on, like, I guarantee it's using lightweight frame. So these are very light cars, so they're using, this is kind of inverse, but these are also, like, you know, artish builds. Look, let's just look up something that you would actually look up. Let's say Scorpions. Though this might actually use heavy frame, we'll find out. Usually if, it's a mix, but usually you get these 6 frames are all light versus the 3 that are standard. But this is a 1x1 frame, so that guy was just looking for it's already light enough. But overall, most people start moving towards lightweight frame, and as you can see, it's a bunch of past 3 looking frame and all that stuff like that. And the reason why everyone moves towards it is because you need mass. Mass is extraordinarily important, and because of that, you want to unlock all of the lightweight frame parts as soon as you can, usually. So, other than that, the Lunatics are characterized by having some very flimsy parts. However, that said, they have access to the puncher bumper and they have access to the buggy bumper. These 2 bumpers, if you look at the durability to mass ratio, mwah, chef's kiss. If you're looking for a very high durability bumper, but a very low mass cost, look no further. Those are the 3 parts. Also, they have access to the power slide, which is a pass-through part that actually gives durability to your vehicle. It only passes 25% through, though, and so on and so forth. Pole position bumper, it's okay. It's not that great. Bully bumper, it's okay. It's not that great because they have their durability is too low. Their durability starts reaching that of standard parts, so it's not really that important unless you're actively trying to absorb collision damage. But yeah, characterizing lunatic parts is a low mass and low durability, but high durability for the amount of mass provided. That's basically the idea. So if you want to have a light build and have high-ish durability, you come to the Lunatics. The only downside is that you pay, and what you pay for is in power score. The power score to durability is terrible. It's terrible. It's just awful. It's the worst in the game, and that's because the power score that you're paying is the most that you can for the durability you're getting. 41 power score for 58 points of durability. I think that's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 0.8 power score per durability. It is the worst in the game at that. The frontal protection system, decent bumper. I don't believe they give access to any melee, which is shocking. But yeah, other than that, the sheer fact that Lunatics give access to structural parts is insane. The only thing that holds them back at all is that they unlock the Firesters. I know that sounds bad, because Firesters aren't necessarily poor. It's just that that's their unlock. Their unlock leads to the Firesters. And if you're doing that kind of play style, going from shotguns to, I believe, more shotguns, single-shot shotguns, then it's all right. But other than that, I mean, if you're doing not crickets, if you're doing course-fire rocket launchers as well, that's also not a bad decision. So, but with that said, the Lunatics are the first S tier of the 3. They are the best of the starting factions, simply because of the fact that they give access to everything that you kind of want access to begin with. They're very good in general. I highly recommend as a new player that you try to gravitate towards leveling up the Lunatics first, simply because of all of the things that they give. Yeah, I probably should have gone over the faction workbenches, which is what they actually craft, but the reason why I don't bother doing that is because I already have parts and weapons tier lists, and you can find all that information there. Ultimately, the idea is if you want access to more shotguns, you go Lunatics. If you want access to machine guns, you go Nomads. If you want access to cannons, you go Scavengers. That's more or less the basics on that. So next up, we're up to the Nomads. Nomads are right here, so where do they go? So the Nomad parts are your original in-betweeners. which is to say they are in between the Scavengers and the Lunatics. They have parts that are characterized by having middling durability, middling ratios of mass to durability, and middling ratios of durability to power score. They're your middle faction. They have access to the small plow, a phenomenal bumper. Basically, the shape, the size, everything about this makes it is the OG wedge part. Parts of note that are phenomenal are the narrow wings, which are really, really useful. People like them, I like them, simply because they make builds look sleek. And they also provide a decent amount of durability for their mass. They have interesting fenders with the Avea fenders, and if I recall it correctly, they also give access to the blade wings, which are also a melee part, but both twin and singular blade wings, which, as I mentioned, not all factions give access to both melees and bumpers. Prestiging them gets you access to the Cordelia fenders, which are great, and everything else here is pretty much flaming Duke. Yeah, so once you get the Cordelia fenders, you're pretty much done with the factions themselves. Leveling these guys up unlocks the Dawn's Children. So, what do I have to say about the Nomads? So, the Nomad parts, and yes, they actually have access to the specialized bumper, the fuselage, airplane interior. These are specialized. They aren't unlocked from leveling up, but they're unlocked by the engineer badges. What do I have to say about the Nomads? The Nomads parts are very interesting because they're kind of like when you need a parts, right? Normally, when you play Crossout, you want to focus, right? You either want to focus going big or going home. Nomads don't do that. You don't focus on going big and you don't focus on going home, so you're kind of just meandering around in circles. It's kind of weird. I personally don't much enjoy many of the Nomad parts. In fact, the ones that I called out are the only ones that I actually genuinely like. That would be the Corridias, the airplane interiors, which you have to spend points on, which aren't naturally, you don't get when you level up. The small plow is a great again bumper, and you definitely want all four of them. Getting at least two of them, that'll put you in a very good spot. You can mount them top bottom so that you can have like a nice little butt on your car that's very defended. Both the small plows have half the durability, I believe. Yeah, basically half the durability of a train plow. So two of these on your back is the equivalent of a train plow on your front, right? Good stuff all around. But with the exception of those parts, the rest of these things are pretty much trash. Not joking. I'm looking at these and thinking it through, and I actively avoid using, unless you're min-maxing down to the last ton. There are very few vehicles that I have that have any Nomad parts on them at all. So to give you an example, if you were to look at this build, almost all of these things are Syndicate. You've got Machinist, you've got Engineer, you've got Hyperborean, and right here on this Bite Me sticker is the only Nomad part that's on this entire build, right? You've got Scavenger walls, like, again, like, you just, I don't really use I just don't use it. I find it difficult to use Nomad parts. The blade wings are almost always used, though. I will say that twin blade wings are probably the best melee in the game. Yeah, they are. It's, in all honesty, when you think about it, if you're looking between twin blade wings and hatchets, even the cutters that were recently released, yeah, I will argue that the best true melee in the game is the twin blade wing. And the reason why is because of how it protects your build. Almost everyone does this right here. If you're looking at the screen, this is what you do to protect your wheels. If you keep losing wheels, it's because you didn't put a twin blade wing near it. This is like perfect protection. You get your 90% damage resistance, and also you get that super powerful melee attack, and that's just how you protect it, right? It's integral in the protection of wheels across the board for every car that you'll ever make. Yeah, this isn't the twin blade wing, it's the incisor. It comes in a close second, but you catch my drift. So twin blade wings are the only things that are really holding up the Nomad faction, to be honest. It really comes down to really just your small plows and your twin blade wings, but the rest is pretty dookie, to be honest, if I'm being super honest. So, where do they land? Surprisingly, I'd probably say C tier. You do want to level them up eventually, but you don't really have to go out of your way to do it. You really shouldn't. Yeah, you really shouldn't necessarily go too far out of your way to level them up, because most of the stuff they get is an afterthought. It's not light enough, and you would rather have a Lunatic part, or it's not heavy enough, and you'd rather have a Scavenger part. But in addition to that, they're upcoming factions. Oh, by the way, one of the things that I failed to mention, and I need to go over because there is actually a lot of data on all this stuff that I failed to mention. The 20% damage resistance on Nomad parts is 10% bullet, which is great, 5% blast, and 5% thermal. Thermal is a very bad damage type to be resistant to in crossout, but you might be thinking, but wait, hold on, Cardboard Ninja, there's flamethrowers. Yeah, okay, hold on, you're right, that one's on me. Well, let's see how many thermal weapons there are. None of these. This one. None of these. This one. None of the... this one. This one has a flame component. Sorry. It doesn't actually do flame damage, but it has a flame component. This one. None of these. None of these. You might be thinking, but wait, no, the Athena overheats. That's energy. So it's energy that overheats. We're looking for thermal. Thermal that overheats. None of these. This one. And these. There's your thermals. None of these. Oh, this one. You see what I'm saying? There's not very many thermal weapons in this game, right? So having thermal resistance really plays against this faction. Not as much as you'd think, because of the fact that it only has 5% thermal, but that is 5% less blast resistance than you had from over, let's say, the Engineer faction. So that kind of hurts the Nomads. And I should probably go over the Scavengers durability parts, which cover 5% bullet and 15% blast. So the Scavengers are heavier. The blast resistance is... having lower bullet resistance sucks, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie, because it's 5% less than the baseline Engineers, but as it has 15% blast, so it means that when things do explode on your build after they penetrate with the bullet damage, that's when you get that 15% damage resistance. And many weapons have blast damage attached to it. So, continuing on. Next faction. Which faction should we choose? Let's go with the first one on the list, the Dawn's Children. Why not? Dawn's Children are characterized by continuing to shit on the Nomads. One of the advanced factions, unlocked by leveling up your Nomads to 10. The Dawn's Children are characterized by sleek-looking, lightweight parts. So the idea is the Dawn's Children are lighter than Nomads, if I recall correctly, but also more durable than Nomads at the same time. It's a very interesting thing. As an advanced faction, they have 25% damage resistances, and that's split between thermal, which, as we've just mentioned, is dog crap, and energy. Energy weapons that exist in the game are many of those ones that I went over earlier, but energy is not a common damage type, to be sure. One of the things that I would be remiss to go over is they do have access to the infamous hover. So if you are making hovers, you need Dawn's Children so that you can start pooping out the... is it 16 or 32? I think it's 16. Yeah, the 16 hovers that you need to produce to actually be competitive in the hover game. But yeah, if you need them, this is where you come to make them. You got to come to Dawn's Children for that. So let's take a look at their parts. So once again, Dawn's Children in the current Battle Pass that's out are releasing new parts like the panel arch, the mounting bracket, the impact bumper, and so on and so forth, the cutter, and so, etc., etc. We won't be going over those parts. Also, the left and right heatsink, they're phenomenal, but regardless of those, the Dawn's Children has okay parts. The idea is this. You pay for the durability that you get in bulk. So Dawn's Children's parts in general are a little more bulky than you would expect. For example, the cooling system has 75 durability, but is a 2x2x4. I'm sorry, a 2x2x6 or whatever. It's basically much thicker than its contemporary. So if you go to the Steppenwolves, they have 71 durability, but it's a 1x6x2, right? So it's literally half the volume, right? For 4 more durability. So you can actually fit 2 of those in the place of 1 of these, so you have double the durability effectively. But the overall idea is that that's what you're getting when you're building with Dawn's Children's parts. They unlock bumpers now, but I don't believe they had bumpers before. I believe before they had no melee and no bumpers that were granted. Now that this new Battle Pass is out. They now have access to the Impact Bumper. Oh no, I'm sorry, they had the Incisor, which was the only other true competitor to the melee that I was talking about earlier. The dang me, because it's actually on the build right now. The Blade Wings. So it's only the true competitor. It has less durability. You know, it's okay. Ultimately, Dawn's Children, if you are not trying specifically to get into the hover game, Dawn's Children is a little bit lackluster. They do have access to Lunar 4 wheels, but to be honest, if you're pushing ground, if you're pushing for wheels, Lunar 4s, while they are phenomenal and they have an amazing CK out there that does exist, they're not that. They're good. They're basically A tier, but there are other A tier wheels that you can also get from other factions. The only reason I'm going over the parts list for this is because as an advanced faction, you're really coming here for the parts, right? Quasars are good, but not the super best. Gravistars are among the highest DPS weapons in the entire game, if not the highest. So if you're looking for energy weapons, Gravistars are where it's at. Though I believe, I'm not sure if everyone can craft the Gravistar. I believe everyone can, but you might not be able to. It may have become available in an event. They have the pulse weapons. I'm sorry. They have the Prometheus energy weapons. I think they're called plasma emitters. But plasma emitters require access to a plasma charger to make them any good. So there's a lot of problems with the Dawn's Children, really. Like, you're looking at this, and there's not a lot of fun here to be had, if I'm being entirely honest. So where does it land them? With their durabilities, with their damage resistances, with the fact that the Dawn's Children are a long con. Eventually, you're going to level every faction to maximum. I don't see new players who are short-sighted in the game, just for the short term, playing Dawn's Children. And the reason why I don't think that they should spend time leveling up Dawn's Children is because if you're not going to play the game forever, don't bother. If you're going to play the game forever, you're eventually going to get around to them, and you're eventually going to want to shit out those 16 hovers that you're going to need to hold on to a faction crafting event and all that good stuff like that. And they'll give you access to decent parts, but in reality, in comparison to even what's currently on display up here, like, I can't rate them much higher than the Nomads, to be super honest. They're better than Nomads, but not enough to put them into a higher tier. That's the interesting thing about Dawn's Children. Because everything that they do is very specialized, and you need special things in order to make Dawn's Children kind of function. So for that reason, we're going to put them in C tier, and we're going to continue on to the Firestarters. Firestarter parts come with thermal resistance out the wazoo, bullet resistance, and blast resistance. So 5% bullet, 5% blast means that you're going to take 5% more damage than engineers on both of those, but you do have thermal resistance of 15%. There are not very many thermal weapons in the game. So basically they take their largest bonus and they throw that right in the trash. Their parts are very similar to the Lunatics insofar as that they are very low durability in comparison to their bulk, but they have decent mass to durability ratio. Very decent. The second best in the game behind the Lunatics. Their parts are honestly not very good. They're very... Okay. They have stylish parts. That's the best way of putting it. Their stuff looks cool. If you want that Mad Max aesthetic, that's why you come here. That's why you come to the Firestarter. There are reasons... Hold on. There are reasons to use Firestarter parts because of their very interesting bulk to durability to mass ratio, not their power score, but because of that ratio that I just mentioned, and of course access the vial, which is the best part that they get access to, you'll find these parts forced onto builds. An example, I can do that right now. I use it on this build. These are Firestarter parts. That you'll end up seeing Firestarter parts forced on a certain build simply because of the fact that they end up with the greatest ratio of bulk, mass, etc. to fit on certain builds because you kind of have to. You kind of it's one of those you kind of have to factions. You're like, Lunatic is too weak and Scavenger is too heavy. Dawn's Children doesn't have it, So that's the only time you end up putting Firestarter parts. And those Firestarter parts you put on are the bus panel, the minivan panel, Scorched, and sometimes you're going to get your Boars and your Devilries. Everything else on this list you don't really use. The vial should go on every build because it's got 90% damage pass through and actually increases durability. If you do unlock catheters, which I believe are unlocked unfortunately via engineer points, they're phenomenally good at structural parts. But from just leveling up fire starters, you kind of get duked all over. So, and also the parts themselves don't have the damage resistance types that you want. The flare bumper is interesting and bugged in certain ways, but we won't get into that. So let's go to the crafting for the fire starters. And if you like the rockets and the single shot shotguns, then that's where you're going with it. But honestly, these aren't very good. But I will say Shiv are S tier wheels. So if you like being on wheels, Shivs are where it's at. These are phenomenal wheels. They can take you into the in-game. You can fuse them. They're very good. Bigfoot wheels, phenomenal wheels. They're my favorite wheel in the game. They're not the best wheel in the game, but they are my favorite wheel in the game. Phoenix, Dogshit, Oppressor, arguably now the best engine because it actually has a 22% max cabin speed. One could argue that it is the best engine. I'm not a big fan of meat grinders, but there are multiple different meat grinder builds out there. Incinerator is a phenomenal raid weapon and Clan Wars weapon. If you become phenomenal with incinerators, there's some incinerator players out there who combine it with hovers, as always, but that are just the best of the best of the best, and they can keep your entire enemy team on fire. You can combine this with the Hadron cabin and constantly keep the entire enemy team on fire, and the Harpy cabin is a staple of Crossout with how good it is. So that changes things about the fire starters a lot. The parts, but their weapons, oh yeah, the fire starters have some good stuff. By the way, originally in my cabin tier list, the Bat is rated as a D tier cabin. That is no longer the case because the Bat is now just a very slightly worse version of the Harpy cabin. Exact same perk, just a little bit worse. 50% ammo, 20% explosion radius. You're looking at, I think it's like, what, 25? Yeah, I'm sorry, 20% ammo and 10% explosion radius. And they also increased the acceleration rate of the Bat to bring it back up because it originally had the acceleration rate of 100 kph cabin, which is what it was. And then they nerfed it by 5 kilometers per hour, and then it just accelerated slow. It was a D tier cabin. They fixed it. They didn't give it its cabin speed back. They didn't, but they did increase the acceleration, and they reduced the amount of effect that mass had on the Bat cabin's acceleration. The Bat is a phenomenal cabin right now. So actually, if you like that light, fast play style, you like wheels, and if you like the best, in my opinion, the best wheels in the game, and you like one of the best engines in the game, and if you like incinerators, and if you like the Harpy, yeah, fire starters bring it. Also, they're the ones that give you access to the first non-pack flame weapon in the game, which is the Draco, which just recently got nerfed, but it still claps cheeks, as everyone knows, and of course the Fortune Mine Layer and the Nidhogg shotgun. Griffin, I believe, is not available to everyone, but if you can craft Griffins are, of course, an S-tier cabin. So the fire starters eventually give access to some of the best in this game. They genuinely do. If you're going to play Droner, you need the wheels. If you're going to play anything with cannons, you're going to need the Oppressor. Fire starter is actually really strong, only not because of the fact that you want it to be, but because it's not the faction it's not the faction that the city needs. It's the faction that they deserve. So, believe it or not, the Firestarter faction, surprisingly, despite me opening with all the things I said about it, comes in at A tier. Even though the parts aren't very good, the weapons that you get eventually from it are. They really are. And the components that you get from it are also a very strong showing. The components that you get, obviously, you want the Oppressor eventually if you're going to use any turreted weapon so that you can actually aim the damn thing, right? So, next up, we're going to go to the third specialized faction. That would be the Steppenwolves. My personal favorite faction in the entire game. When I saw these guys originally, I was like, oh man, I want to be the Steppenwolves. Ah, look at how cool this guy is. Ah, he's wearing a flak vest. Ah, does this guy have a bionic arm? Oh my god, he's got a bionic arm. So, let's quickly take a look at their parts. Steppenwolf parts are characterized by, of course, having 25% durability, only 5% bullet, 15% blast, and 5% energy resistance. Energy resist is, again, a rare damage type, a more rare damage type. Honestly, you want that blast, you want that bullet, and thankfully it does have bullet and blast, but it doesn't really have it any, I don't believe, much greater numbers, if any greater numbers, than the Scavenger faction. 15% blast resistant, meaning that you're going to be great against the pure blast weapons, such as rockets, because, the cricket's back in the game. So, that's good. But other than that, 5% bullet is mediocre. Their parts are characterized by having the absolute dead ass worst mass to durability ratio in the game. And in addition to that, they have the absolute best power score to durability ratio in the game. So that means that if you only have 40 power score, you will not beat 110 durability. If you are looking to meet a certain power score bracket and you want the most amount of hit points per that power score, you're going to be covered in green, baby, because that is exactly what the Steppenwolves bring to the table. They bring hit points. And my favorite module in the entire game, for those of you who even wonder, it's actually the hard module. I don't know why, I just like the hard module. It just is cool. They have access to a crappy bumper, and that's all, I think. Okay, so that's what you get from leveling up, from battle passes, and from, by the way, I should probably put this in this video, links, oh, dang it, and I have to remember to put the link down here. You can unlock the APC bumpers early via one of the free packs that's out there. I think it's not the Marmok pack, but it doesn't matter. I'll put it in the link description below, so if you're on the PC, click that, download, get your free stuff. You get access to the left and right APC bumpers. These are arguably the second best bumpers in the game. They're phenomenal. They have a horrible mass. They're very heavy, but they have 155 durability each, and they're in the shape of an L. You would be surprised at the number of things that you can fit behind an APC bumper and keep it alive. Other than that, you can, of course, spend your engineer badges to get them. Some of the specialty parts, such as the APC fenders and the military truck fenders, cool to have, lame to use because they're not very good. Ramparts, also not very good to use, but they do look cool. And also, turret vault left, turret vault right also suck. I'm sorry. They suck. They look cool, but they suck. The things that stand out are for the Steppenwolves. You've got your APC bumpers, your APC roof part, the de facto most powerful part in the game. It isn't the most powerful part in the game anymore. Hold on. Let's just sort via durability. Yeah, no, it's not anymore. It used to be more durable than the crane side left and the crane side right, but in general, it is, for its mass, for what it does, used to be one of the most powerful. It is number 2 or number 3 most powerful part in the entire game. It is very easy to build with because it is a 1x4 by, I believe, 6 or 8, something like that. So, common part, you're going to see it everywhere. Almost everyone uses it. When you're just looking to throw durability onto your build, you grab an APC roof part. You're like, whatever, click, 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 click. APC rears, they're okay. They are similar to the roof parts, except they have awkward geometry, less durability. So, you know, armored hatches are fun. Small APC panels, hard modules, as I said, my favorite part in the game. Again, this is my favorite faction in the game, but not because of any reason other than the fact that it's your hit points. The things that you're going to be using for hit points are obviously the APC roof part as mentioned, and the other things I mentioned, hard module, small APC panel. Those are your 3 standouts, and then you've got your APC bumpers, and that's more or less it from the Steppenwolves that you're going to try and shove on every build. You get the defense line when you level up, but it is bad. It is bad. For 192 mass, you get 89 durability. Let's take a look at that, just so we're on the same page. Remember, we're going to go by mass. So it was 192. 192 mass gets you 89 durability. It's a tiny little bumper. It's a 2x1x4. This thing, the off-road bumper, for 192 mass gives you double that durability, basically. It's like, what the hell? Obviously, you get, that's 28 power score, but it's just a terrible bumper. Let's go to their crafting, and I'm not going to lie to you. Before I click, ask you what I'm going to click, you're not going to find a lot of good shit here. You're not going to find a lot of good stuff here. The Jawbreaker Heavy Cabin, 1 was made a heavy cabin, which is good. 2, it was given a perk, which makes it a lesser version of the Humpback, which you can also craft, which used to be the largest cabin in the game. The perk is good. 15% bonus damage. You're going to be taking a lot of damage. It actually synergizes well with itself. With armored tracks, which you get from the Scavengers. You can also unlock the APC wheels here. APC wheels are a decent wheel. They are just a decent wheel. They're not great. They're good. They're all right. And the Sidekick drone. This is a very poor showing for Teal. Like, this is among the shittiest amount of stuff that you unlock for unlocking a faction. Like, oh, all right, wheels. Anyway, but they have this workshop, which has another shit showing. I'm sorry. I didn't want you guys to think that this was going to be good. Yeah, no. Most people don't like the caucus, and most people who hate people who play with the caucus. I crafted enough to fuse them so you can all suck my dick. But regardless of that, the caucus isn't a very good gun unless you have a lot of things backing it up. It is very similar to the Stillwind in that it needs to be propped up with some stilts. The Whirl autocannon is genuinely great gun, and in fact, from everything on this list, one of the best. It's the second best thing you can craft here. ML200 legs, dog shit. Everyone knows they're dog shit. You've seen the moving part tiered list. You don't need me to tell you that. Clarinet toe. What? Literally the worst weapon in the game. Horrible. The literal worst weapon in the game. You don't see it in matches. You shouldn't see it in matches. Dog shit. One of the best cabins in the game, if not the best heavy cabin in the entire game. I believe is the only S tier heavy cabin that I've ever given S tier. Simply because 30% damage is nothing to sneeze at. It's got great stats. With a very decent walker build, with a lot of parts that absorb hit point, absorb damage. That way that you can constantly keep that perk up. Humpback isn't bad. It is definitely the only S tier heavy cabin in the entire game. If you're looking for big heavy builds, that's why you would come here. And then the Bastion, which is one of my favorite heavy cabins in the game, if not my favorite heavy cabin in the game, which is only C tier at best. It's dog shit. It is very difficult to use. You have to get people to shoot this plate in order to get the perk working. Energy weapons and thermal weapons effectively bypass it. Thermal weapons don't bypass it. Thermal weapons normally, like for example, if someone's running at you with Tempura or if someone's running at you with a Firebug and they hit the front plate, it is halved, but incinerators bypass it because they just throw that on your feet and they just watch your entire build burn. But yeah, so the Bastion, not a very strong showing. So we've got bad, 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 useless, good, great. Not a strong showing of leveling up. So where does the Steppenwolves land? Let's get back to ye old tier listy. So where does Steppenwolves land then? I mean, you've got a mix of good, you got a mix of bad, and in all honesty, the parts for durability are why you want to level up Steppenwolves more than anything. Those durable parts are phenomenal in getting your stuff up and running, but the crafts are freaking awful. They're awful, I'm not going to lie to you. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't feel good to level up the Steppenwolves, because you get stuff you need, which is, of course, high durable parts, which you will shove onto nearly every build. But it's at the cost of fun. That stuff just not fun. I think the legendary tier unlocks. Hold on, let me check. While we're here, why not? We may as well look at their legendaries. Yeah, no, it's... Ugh. The cohort is an okay cabin, in my opinion. Cyclone's in a phenomenal place right now, but nobody is like, oh man, can't wait to get me into those Cyclones. Mandrake is the worst. If it's the worst artillery weapon, it's a joke. There's only one person, and his name is Tooz, pronounced Tooz, spelled T-Y-Z. Look him up on YouTube. I may even link to him. He's the only good Grand Mandrake player in all of Crossout. He is phenomenal. I would never mess with that man, but for everyone else, they're a free kill. Mandrakes are dog shit in general, but he makes it work. And of course, the BC 17 Tsunami, which is an S-tier gun. But it's so weird. It's so feast or famine. Feast, famine, famine, famine. Right? Feast, famine, 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 famine. Famine, feast, right? And then, of course, it's just famine across the board, right? So you got yourself a lot of unfun stuff in the Steppenwolves, and it feels to me that there's almost nothing on this list that you want to level up into except for durability. And you can get that really early on, kind of. There's no super bumpers, there's no super melee, there's no super part in Steppenwolves. Steppenwolves in general are just general, right? They're just general. They're like, we're here, you kind of need our parts because we have the most durability, but we don't give you really much. And that really hurts for me to say, because they are, I believe, my favorite faction just because I always use their Steppenwolf parts. But I honestly can't recommend them. That sucks. I wanted to put them B tier because their parts are good, and you do want them for durability, but you can afterthought that shit, to be honest. We're just going to say you can do it as an afterthought. Ooh, that hurts. That hurts. Alright, so let's go to the next one up, which is the Founders. I didn't think about all this until I did it, and that really hurts. Because I just want to be objective, and objectively, that's bad. So, the Founders are a specialty faction that was available in one of the prior battle passes. Founders are an extension of the Engineers. They are like Engineer pluses, as it were. So, let's take a look at what they give you. They gave us a whole bunch of random stuff, but their parts are characterized by being called Machinist. They're machinery parts. And they have 25 25% damage reduction divided amongst three things: 10% bullet, 10% blast, and a 5% energy. As they are an offshoot of the engineer faction, that explains why they have 10% in bullet and blast, the two most common damage types. And energy is okay. I mean, it's okay to have it. They give access to a whole slew of things, but let's go over their crafting first. The array wheel and the APC wheel that I was just showing off from the Steppenwolves are basically the same wheel. They're basically almost exactly the same. You can ignore any differences, to be honest. They're basically the same wheel. They're both good. The Summoner is poop-poop. It's not fun. It's pretty bad. The Epics, the Verifier is mandatory to have one of in CW. Other than that, the radar is okay. It's not the Doppler, so it's okay. The blockchain is one of my favorite guns in the entire game, but it is basically an energy cannon. If you have extended range blockchains, you're in a good way. If you don't have extended range blockchains, you're not. The Big Ram was the first leg meant to replace the ML200 leg, and it did. It did its job. It did just fine, and now we have a leg that replaces the Big Ram that's out right now. Trigger is a decent gun, but it isn't great. It's limited by its range. So, and then the Omnibox is an S-tier cabin. It's just great. And then we have Annihilators in the Assembler. The Assembler is a D-tier piece of shit, dog shit, garbage, and the Annihilator is the only drone that you should be technically using. It's one of the better drones in the entire game. So let's go look at their parts. As I said, Machinist parts are characterized by the 10%, 10%, 5% bullet blast energy, but in addition to that, they are really thick boys. They're really chunky boys. They are pretty much like the Steppenwolves in that they have a fat lot of hit points, usually. So if you have mass to spare, and you also have access to Machinist parts, you grab your crane side lefts, your crane side rights, high five, because those are, I believe, the current highest durability parts in the game. Front ends are really good, though for the front ends particularly, oh, never mind. They actually updated this. This didn't used to have any points on the front to attachment points, so it was really hard to build with. That got better. Never mind. Yeah, no, these are phenomenal parts, honestly. If you have access to Machinist parts, they're very good. They basically reach a lot of sides. This digger hole part is awesome because that slope matters. I'll even show you something. Why not? You guys are here. You're watching. Let me show you something you can do with the that slope. Oh, wrong build. My apologies. That slope is real. There it is. That little gap, that little slope, can fit over that little slope. So, like, for example, that cheetah is taking up spots above it. Not anymore, it's not. You can actually manage to fit, like, parts into certain areas. It's crazy. So, all sorts of good stuff for the Machinist parts. Some things not so good. Their lighter parts are total shit. Excavator plates, crane plugs. Like, if you're going to use lighter parts, you're going to want to use things from lighter factions. So, it makes sense. Heavier factions have good heavy parts and bad light parts, basically, and this is a heavier faction. The slope platform is the exact same as the small platform, except it just is worse. It just has less durability, but the reason why you end up using it is if you want your build to look a certain way, things like that. It's got, basically, you've got a lot of things here. The truck fenders are good for surrounding weapons. The crane hole left, crane hole right, it makes you look okay, but it's not that good. The D sides, the small D side, the D side, the D hole, phenomenal. They're great parts. Excavator sides, great parts. I mean, yeah, no, actually, now that I'm thinking about if you build heavy, the Machinists are very good. They are very good. They supplant your Steppenwolf parts. Look at this, a heavy build, and what's covering it? You've got Machinist parts here, and Steppenwolf parts here. You combine them both together to make something that's got a boatload of hit points, right? That's just how it works. So if you're looking for hit points, that's where you're looking to go. The things that the Founders craft, though, as I stated before, very similar to Steppenwolf's. I'm pretty sure also they don't give bumpers. I'm pretty sure there was no bumper released in this patch, or melee. Just eyeballing it. Yeah, no bumper, no melee. Again, they are very similar to Steppenwolf's. Similar boat, simply because you're only getting them really for if you did have them, you're only really getting them to use their structural parts. Some of these things are necessities, right? You need the verifier in certain groups. Everything else here, you don't need. right? Everything here you don't need. Because again, any wheel can replace any wheel effectively. The Summoners shit, and the drones and annihilators. So that brings the Founders down, but their parts are very solid. So again, this comes down to... It comes down to, similarly to the Steppenwolves, honestly. They're not fun to unlock. They're not really fun to have. I haven't really crafted anything from their workbenches, even though I have access to them. Because again, I don't need the shitty wheels, and I certainly don't want to use the Summoner or the Argument, and I don't really care about the drones, right? And of course, the Assembler has ass in the name, so it has basically no crafts that are available that are any good. Basically, I mean, it has some things that I find fun, but in general aren't super meta, like the blockchain and the trigger. So, where does it land? It's unfortunately down here with Steppenwolves. If you want to spend your points to unlock those specific parts from Machinist, for example, you don't have access to Machinist faction because obviously the battle pass for them is passed on. Yeah, okay, fair enough. If you're going to spend engineer badges, go ahead and grab those parts that I noted that are actually good, but don't just get everything, and you're not really missing much for not having that if you didn't get it in the battle pass. Next up, we're gonna do the Syndicate because they've been out longer. Let's do the Syndicate. We're almost done. Syndicate parts are characterized in having... hold on, let's just do it this way. Syndicate parts. This is Syndicate? Neat. Are having 10% bullet, 5% thermal, 10% energy. That's a very interesting combination. 10% energy is okay. Again, there are multiple energy weapons in the game. It's got that 10% bullet, so you're not really losing much off of that either from your standard engineer parts. Their parts are almost all like body work, body kit stuff. So if you're I don't want to say it. If you're looking to rice up your build, you put Syndicate parts on. People like the sleek, flat, printed look. A lot of people do, and there are a couple standout parts here, and I'll go over those right now. The Sunite is great. Honestly, it fits over most wheels very easily. This includes Bigfoots. The Sunite has great, great geometry. You can fit it just about anywhere. If I recall, the Sunite is like right here. That's this part right here. So, yeah, no. Sunite, great part. Sindons are also good. Though I think there's a bug. I think, the Kotes, you only get 2 right Kotes and 3 left Kotes. I don't know why that is. I've sent bugs up to the devs. They just haven't got back to me. There are uses for the Kuzazuris. Not because of their durability, but because of their mounting shape. You can actually use them as extensions off the front of your build. They're a 1x6x1. So those are good. The Kohairis are great because they're just great fenders. They make your build look good. They protect your wheels. So what's not to like? The Sekiro is a lot of durability. So they've got a lot. And they basically have a little accoutrement that you want to throw on your build to make it look good. You're not going to build an entire build out of Syndicate parts. You almost can't, basically. It's just that you build your build and then you throw this body kit on it to make it look good. And you're going to get something good out of it. You're going to get 10% damage resistance against... bullets, which is of course decent, and 10% against energy. So they'll stop some of that energy damage from coming in if people are firing at you with like quasars or anything like that. Going to their crafting, let's see what we can craft off Syndicates. Tempura are once again. Let's start with the wheels. Camber wheels are just wheels. I've mentioned this in my movie part tier list. These are just wheels. There's fucking wheels. The Tempura is a weapon of, think of it kind of like a lightsaber. And I don't mean it's going to cut through your build like a lightsaber, though it can. I mean that it's a more elegant weapon for a different time. It's very difficult to use, but you can get big gains from the Tempura. It's one of the few weapons that you need to fuse to make it super phenomenal. If you fuse it for duration, it actually gets 1 additional tick of Tempura damage, and that additional tick means that your damage goes from like 600 to 900 or something. It's crazy. But Yao Guai, this is cancerous. This is cancer. Anybody who played the most recent fucking event, I'm sorry for the profanity, but the ones where you have infinite reload, the Yao Guai just dukes down on everyone. It's like, oh, my guns have infinite reload? I guess I'm just going to cover the entire map with drones. Ugh. Enlightenment is not a weapon. It says it's a weapon. It's not a weapon. It's just it's a module. It is among the worst modules in the entire game. You want to call it a weapon, fine. Don't build it. Don't look at it. Don't get one. Here's the reason why. The Enlightenment, I mean, this is in my module tier list, but I'll cover it. It's meant to stop people from going invisible, but it is a homing missile that lets them know that a homing missile is coming at them so they can go invisible to dodge the fucking missile. So stupid. It's just dumb. Anyway, what they should have done was made the Enlightenment a crossbow similar to the Phoenix, and then you shoot that across the map and it sticks to someone, and then they can't go invisible. And then, after a couple seconds, it explodes. That's what they should have done, but they didn't, because they're bad. Which brings us to the Janeby, which is a A-tier cabin, only works with wheels, the only downside, and the Omnis, which are the rolling part, which are an S-tier movement part, probably the best one, best ground-based movement part in the game. I do not like them, personally. I know people who don't like them also. I agree with all of those people. However, with that said, unfortunately, the unprecedented mobility of the Omnis, especially post-patch, does make them, unfortunately, an S-tier movement part. Fight me. So that brings us to the Kaiju. If you don't have one, getting one's good. The Jiboku, shitting more cancer onto the field, and the Yokozuna cabin, which is an okay cabin. Honestly, if you have one, it's great, but I've never seen anyone say, oh man, I gotta get me a Yokozuna. No one's ever said that. You're not gonna say that. If you have one, great. These are not bad cabins to have. If you have one from the Battle Pass that's fused, great, use it. This is actually it's got a great perk. It's a great cabin. Is it one that people should go out of their way to get? No. The Jiboku, if you like pooping cancer onto the battlefield, I hate you, but this is the faction to come to get it. Kaiju, believe it or not, Kaiju is actually a solid weapon. When it came out, it was super solid. It was super busted because this hit scan, they were like, whoopsie, hit scan, oh, whoops, it's better than the Scorpion, we fucked that up. And they reduced the projectile velocity by giving it one, and ever since then, it is actually a decent long-range weapon. It became super decent. There are a lot of people who are very good at the Kaiju, and if you're looking for a long-range firepower and you have like, let's say the Dead Man or something, you're looking for one, come get a Kaiju. Yeah, believe it or not, the Syndicate ultimately has multiple things that you would want to craft from it. And its parts, ultimately, aren't bad. I don't want to give the Syndicate a very high rating because I don't like the riced out look, but unfortunately, it's like an A-tier faction. There it is. You didn't see me drag it up there because I didn't tab back, but it's an A-tier faction. Yeah, it would have been nice to drop into B so we didn't have a B and an S and have it just 2, 2, and 2 or some shit like that. But it's not true. It's an A-tier faction. I would definitely say that it's got the parts, it's got the weapons, it's got what you want. It doesn't have specialty parts, it doesn't have specialty melee, but it is what you would kind of want out of a specialty faction. It's got the damage resistance, and it's also got the durability. So good on you, Syndicate. So that brings us to the final faction. The final faction is Hyperborea, released in the Hyperborea update. Hyperborea is brand new. Hyperborea, they had a whole bunch of random crap given to us. We're not going to look at that because that's just a waste. Hold on. I think it's cast parts. Here we go. They did not give very many parts. Let's be completely real. Clearly, didn't give very many parts. So, once again, if you're a heavier faction, your heavier parts should be good, and your smaller parts should be bad. And that follows this. The Nautilus, right, left, right, pauldron, dog shit. Just ignore them, kind of, for now. The deck, Captain's Bridge, and Bulb, great. All of them, great. Highest bullet damage in the game, bullet damage resistance in the game at 15%, which is phenomenal. Extremely good durability for the bulbs, and you get 4 of them. Extremely decent durability for the Captain Bridge, and you get 4 of them, and you get 4 decks which have decent durability at 55. So Hyperborea has these 3 good parts, and these 4, well, these technically 2 because it's life. They're just inverted parts. Not very good parts. The Nautili, not very good. 16 durability is bad. 8 durability is worse. It's half as good. It's just bad and worse. You get the idea. But there are reasons to use them. I'll get into that in a different video, most likely. But for this video, Bulb, Captain's Bridge deck, thumbs way up. Very good. Should use them. You should, if you have access to them, do it. Do it. Because they are very good. They have that sweet, sweet bullet damage resistance. And if I recall correctly, we aren't given weapons from this faction. So there's nothing else that I can really rate. Though they did have access to, there are Hyperborean weapons. I'm not going to go over those. Put very simply, in all honesty, yeah, no, we really get nothing out of this. Wow, every other thing gives a faction workbench. These guys don't have a faction workbench. That's terrible. So, that's a fast one. Let's just go on back over here and rate them. So, in reality, we're rating the entirety of the Hyperborean faction off of the amount of, 7 parts. They're good parts. If you have access to them, use them. They are very, very good. The ones that are very large have great damage resistance. 15% bullet resistance matters, especially in a game where now damage doesn't overflow if you reach a certain percentage. I'll make a video about penetration upcoming, don't worry. So in reality, those parts you actually do want on your build a lot because of that 15%. You're not even joking. It's more than you think it's worth. Honestly, but yeah, gravitate towards using them if you have them available. That's it, and that's all that you really get from the Hyperborean faction. So because of that, it's hard to rank these guys. They're either SA or B. I think it's B tier. My boys, we're gonna go with B, because in reality, they're lesser parts you're never gonna use unless you know what you're doing. You're not really gonna use the pauldrons, but those other parts, if you have them, you absolutely are gonna want to put them on your build. So there you have it. There you go. There is your tier list for the factions. Didn't expect things to reach D tier, but that escalated quickly. And it looks like I'm done on the 1 hour mark. So comments below, yada yada yada. I think I'm done. Peace.